The family buried their son, but he came home on his birthday. It had been exactly 1 year since the Morgans buried their only son, Daniel. The grief still clung to the house like damp air, making the walls feel heavy and the rooms impossibly quiet. On the night of his birthday, rain lashed against the windows and thunder rolled over the hills, the sound echoing through the narrow valley their home sat in. Clara Morgan sat in the living room, fingers wrapped around a mug of untouched tea, her eyes fixed on the faded family portrait above the fireplace. Daniel's smile in that photo still had the power to cut her in two. Upstairs, her husband James hadn't spoken all evening. He just stayed in their bedroom, the floorboards occasionally groaning under his restless pacing. At 11:57 p.m., the power flickered. The shadows stretched unnaturally long before the lights steadied again. Clara barely noticed until the first knock came. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't hesitant. It was 3 slow, deliberate knocks at the front door. She froze. Who would be out here in the middle of a storm, at midnight, on this road that barely anyone traveled? She called out for James, but his footsteps didn't come. The only reply was another 3 knocks, identical in rhythm. Clara's breath caught. She rose, every muscle tight with unease. When she reached the door, she pressed her ear against it. No sound, just the wind and the rain, until a voice spoke from the other side. "Mom, it's cold out here." Her heart lurched violently. The voice was faint, shivering, but impossibly familiar. She stumbled back, her mind clawing at reason. It couldn't be Daniel. They had buried him. She had seen his pale face in the coffin, touched his lifeless hand before they closed the lid. Another knock. A little harder this time. "Please let me in." Clara's hands trembled as she reached for the chain lock, every instinct screaming to stop. The air felt heavier, thicker, pressing on her chest. A part of her, the desperate, grieving part, wanted nothing more than to open the door and hold her son. But another part, the part that remembered the strange smell at his funeral, the way the casket had felt heavier than it should, told her that whatever was on the other side of the door wasn't Daniel. And then the knocking stopped. The dining room's golden light felt warmer now, but I wasn't fooled. I kept watching the waiter. He stood near the far wall, half in shadow, his hands folded neatly over a linen napkin. His posture didn't shift. His chest didn't rise or fall. The other guests chattered and laughed as if nothing was wrong. Forks scraped on plates. Wine poured. A soft piano played somewhere in the corner. But my eyes never left him. The longer I stared, the stranger the details became. His suit was spotless, perfectly pressed, but not new. It looked like it belonged to another decade, a style no one wore anymore. His skin was pale, almost waxy, the kind of tone you'd see on a mannequin. I tested him. I lifted my glass of water and dropped it, not by accident. The shattering ring of glass drew everyone's attention for a moment, except his. He didn't move, not even to glance down. When I knelt to gather the shards, I noticed something by his shoes. The reflection of his face in the polished floor. Except the reflection blinked. I froze, heart hammering. When I looked up, his real face still stared unblinking at the room, lips fixed in that perfect, polite smile. But the reflection's eyes were darting, following me. A cold, thin voice brushed against my ear, though no one stood beside me. "You shouldn't have seen that." The pianist's tune faltered for half a beat, just enough for me to know I wasn't imagining it. The waiter stepped forward. Finally, after all this time, he moved. I woke with my mouth tasting like metal and the faint sound of dripping water somewhere in the distance. My eyes burned as I blinked, and the ceiling above me was wrong, wooden beams bent at unnatural angles, like they were curving toward me. I was no longer in my bedroom. I sat up, my head pounding, and realized the mattress beneath me wasn't a mattress at all. It was soft, yes, but it pulsed faintly like the skin of something alive. I jerked my legs away, stumbling to my feet, and that's when I saw the bottles. Hundreds of them lined the walls, each glowing faintly in colors that hurt my eyes. Deep violets, impossible greens, burning blues. Inside each one floated something human-shaped but wrong. Their bodies twitched in slow, puppet-like movements, eyes closed, mouths whispering soundlessly. A shadow moved at the far corner. It was the man from the kitchen. He was still smiling, but now his teeth were sharper. Too many. In his hand was another bottle, this one not glowing, just murky and dark, like smoke had been trapped inside. "You drank the first one," he said softly, "but you'll need the second. The first keeps you here. The second decides what you become." I backed toward the wall, but the bottles behind me rattled violently, the figures inside pressing their faces against the glass. Their eyes opened all at once, blank white, and their mouths stretched wide, mouthing one word over and over. "Drink." The man stepped closer. "You can fight it, but the longer you wait, the worse the change." He uncorked the dark bottle, and the smoke inside writhed like something alive. It reached for me, tendrils curling toward my mouth. I tried to run. The bottles on the walls shattered in a wave, spilling out the twitching, pale figures. They crawled across the floor with jerky, insect-like movements, their skin slick and shining under the dim light. And then I felt it, something cold and heavy slipping down my throat without my consent. The second bottle was in me before I could even scream. The night air was sharp and restless, carrying with it the faint chime of the bell. Not the soft, accidental sway of metal in the wind. This was deliberate, rhythmic, beckoning. Evan pressed himself against the cold wall of the old parish, every instinct screaming at him to turn back. But the lock on the bell tower door was unlatched, its heavy padlock dangling like someone had ripped it free. That lock had been sealed for years. No one went inside after dark. No one. He pushed the door open, the hinges groaning with a long, metallic protest. The scent hit him first, burnt wood, wet stone, and something far older, like a grave dug open too early. His flashlight flickered, revealing spiral stairs curling upward, disappearing into the black mouth of the tower. The bell tolled again, but this time it was closer inside his skull. A vibration so deep it made his teeth ache. Halfway up he saw them. Names carved into the stone walls, each one darkened with age. Some were so faded they looked centuries old. Others were fresh, jagged. The last one made his stomach drop. Evan Cross. The carving was still damp, the stone dust fresh on the floor. His pulse roared in his ears as he reached the final steps. And then the bell was there, massive, rusted. Its surface was covered in twisting patterns that weren't just decorative. They were words. Not in any language he knew. Something moved behind it, a shadow long and thin, as if stretched beyond what a human body should allow. It reached around the bell, fingers impossibly long, curling toward him. The voice that came was not from a throat. It was from the air itself, sliding into his mind. "When the bell calls your name, you don't get to leave." Evan stumbled backward, but the stairwell was gone. Only the ringing. Louder, crushing. The door had sealed itself shut. Tomorrow, the town would hear the bell again, and someone else's name would be next. The night air hung thick in the restaurant, so still it felt like it was holding its breath. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the windows were too fogged to see if the streets were empty or full. I stood in the middle of the dining room, surrounded by overturned chairs and broken plates. The candles flickered in their holders, casting shadows that danced unnaturally, like marionettes controlled by unseen hands. The waiter was gone, or at least that's what I thought. From the kitchen, the sound came again, silverware gently clinking, like fingers tapping on glass. My heart tightened as I stepped closer, every instinct screaming to run. I pushed the door open. There he was, standing at the center of the kitchen, perfectly still, his head tilted slightly, as if he had been listening for me the whole time. His face wore that same polite smile, but his eyes, they were wider now. And for the first time I realized something. They weren't blinking because they weren't eyes. They were two perfectly round glass lenses. Behind them, I could see faint shapes shifting, like something was watching me through him. Something not human. "I thought you'd already left," he said in that calm, too smooth voice. "Most do." He took one step forward. The sound of his foot hitting the floor was too loud, too heavy, as if the bones inside him weren't arranged like ours. My gaze darted toward the back door. It was only 10 feet away. 9, 8. I ran. The moment my hand hit the door, the lights went out. Something cold and solid closed around my wrist. The waiter's voice was right in my ear now. "Service is forever." I didn't see what happened next, only felt the sensation of falling, like I'd been pulled through the floor itself. When I woke, I wasn't lying on the cold tiles. I was standing, a white shirt on my body, a black apron around my waist, a tray in my hand, and in the reflection of the kitchen window. My eyes were glass, and I didn't blink.